Rudy Giuliani's lawyer that a pardon for himself would be unthinkable and would lead to immediate impeachment.
Thankfully, the president hasn't done anything wrong and wouldn't have any need for a pardon.
But does he absolutely rule out doing that? I mean, does he rule out ever issuing a pardon for himself?
Once again, thankfully, the president hasn't done anything wrong and therefore wouldn't need one. Peter.
So let me ask you if I can. Does the president believe that he is above the law?
Certainly not. The president hasn't done anything wrong.
The question isn't if he's done anything wrong. I guess the question is, does the president believe the framers envisioned a system where the president couldn't pardon himself, where the president could be above the law?
Certainly, the Constitution very clearly lays out the law. And once again, the president hasn't done anything wrong, and we feel very comfortable in that front.
I know, but you just a moment ago said it's not that clear. So I guess simply put, does the president believe he is above the law?
Certainly, no one is above the law. Vivian, go ahead.
If I can't follow, just because I haven't
Sorry,
been
no,
here a
I'm
while.
going to keep going right here.
I just want to ask you, this is an
Sorry,
important
Peter,
one because
we're
it's
gonna
about.
keep moving. Go
I'll just
ahead.
keep asking if I can.
Peter,
The president.
no, you can't actually.
Well,
Go
actually,
ahead.
I'm going to, Sarah. I think this is important. I haven't
I'm
had a
going
chance
to
to ask this
continue to
question.
move on. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Brian.
Two quick questions. One, I've asked this before. Is there any chance we could ever see the president come out here and take some questions from us in this briefing room? And secondly, has anyone in this administration ever asked the president? Last week you had on your agenda where you had lower jobs coming out. I mean, lower unemployment coming out, and you also had the Second Chance Act, I think it was. And instead of those, we had to respond to presidential tweets. Has anybody ever in this administration asked him to back away from Twitter just for a day?
On the first question, certainly you guys would be the first to know if the president comes out here, but thankfully he does address the press in a number of ways and in a number of venues, and we'll see if it happens here, and we'll certainly let you know. In terms of Twitter, the president uses Twitter to communicate directly to the American people. Frankly, you have the ability to choose what you want to write about, and you guys choose to write about things that the American people don't care about day in and day out, and that's a decision that you make, and frankly, I think it's the wrong one. Jordan, go ahead.
You don't have the opportunity to ask him a question about that, though, Sarah. Can we at least get an opportunity to ask him a question
Jordan,
about
go
what
ahead.
he tweets?
Thanks, Sarah. I want to ask you about the lawyer's letter to the special counsel. You said last August that the president did not dictate the statement about the Trump Tower meeting during the campaign, but the lawyers wrote to the special counsel that the president did dictate that statement. What's the reason for that discrepancy?
Like you said, this is from a letter from the outside counsel, and I direct you to them to answer that question. Deborah.
Wrong information?
Once again, you're referencing a letter that came directly from outside counsel, and I would refer you to them to answer that question. Peter?
Sorry, Sarah, I just want to come back. In August, you said he certainly didn't dictate the statement. I wonder if you could tell us the basis of your comment when you made that in August, and do you think that still stands? Is that still operative statement, or do you retract that?
Once again, this is a reference back to a letter from the outside counsel. I understand, but it's also pertaining to a letter from the president's outside counsel, and therefore I can't answer, and I would direct you to them.
What was your basis for saying it in August, though?
Once again, I'm not going to get into a back and forth, and I would encourage you to reach out to the outside counsel. Jim?
Sir, Rudy Giuliani, the president's outside lawyer, said to the Huffington Post, in no case can he be subpoenaed or indicted. I don't know how you can indict while he's in office, no matter what it is. If he shot James Comey, he'd be impeached the next day. Impeach him, and then you can do whatever you want to him. Is that appropriate language coming from the president's outside lawyer to be talking about the president shooting Jim Comey in that fashion?
You would have to ask Rudy Giuliani about his specific comments, but thankfully the president hasn't done anything wrong, and so we feel very comfortable in that. Josh?
Sarah,
Go ahead, Josh.
If I could ask a follow-up
Sorry, I'm
question.
gonna keep going.
If I could
Josh,
ask a follow-up
go ahead.
question, who are these?
Not today, Jim. Go
Well,
ahead,
others
Josh.
have had follow-up questions.
They haven't actually. Go ahead, Josh.
They have had follow-up questions. If I could ask who these legal scholars are that you are
I'm going to
citing,
direct
that
the
would be
question to
great.
Josh. Go ahead.
If you're saying the one thing from the podium that it wasn't dictated by the president, and his lawyers are saying something entirely different, contradicting you, how are we supposed to know what to believe? How can we believe what you're saying from the podium if his lawyers are saying it's entirely inaccurate?
Once again, I can't comment on a letter from the president's outside counsel. I direct you to them to answer it. John?
Sarah, the words are literally, you said he did not dictate. The lawyer said he did. What is it?
I'm not going to respond to a letter from the president's outside counsel. We've purposely walled off, and I would refer you to them for comment. April?
Sarah just said the president hasn't done anything wrong and wouldn't need a pardon, but he said in his tweet that he has the absolute right to pardon himself. Does he assume that special counsel will find him guilty of something?
No, because he hasn't done anything wrong.
But he said in his tweet that he could pardon himself. So it seems to be an assumption that that Mueller will find him wrong for something. And if so, what would it be?
It seems like it would be a completely wrong assumption. The president hasn't done anything wrong. I'm not sure how else I can answer that question.
Two questions on the Justice Department and pardons. For example, the Office of Legal Counsel has said that the president can't actually pardon himself. Does the president requested a new opinion that may inform his tweet today? And also, there are some concerns about whether the president is still fielding those traditional pardon recommendations from the Justice Department. Some people are concerned that instead of relying on the Justice Department, he's relying on sort of rich and famous people to recommend pardons.
The president looks at each case individually to see if something wrong has been done or whether mercy should be given. That's what he's done, and that's what he'll continue to do in the future. He has the authority to make that decision and has.
On OLC, has he asked for a new OLC opinion? I'm sorry, has he asked for a new OLC opinion on the pardon power?
I'm not aware of a recommend or an ask or a recommendation, but certainly would reiterate the fact that the president hasn't done anything wrong. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Since Robert Mueller was named the special counsel over a year ago, the president's team, his legal team, the Justice Department has never challenged the constitutionality of the special counsel. And yet the president today is doing just that. Why hasn't either the Justice Department or the president's legal team challenged the constitutionality? They have the right to do so in federal court, and yet they haven't done so.
Again, scholars have raised a number of questions about the legality.
But specifically, those two entities have not done it. The president's own lawyers have not done it, Sarah, and they can do so.
You would have to ask them. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the outside counsel.
What about the Justice Department? Can you speak on behalf of the Justice
I would
Department?
refer you to the Justice Department. They have a pretty large comms team. They'd be happy to answer those questions. Sayer?
Sarah, can you give us a little bit more background on the pardon process? Is there a process in place at this White House to review pardons? And how did the pardon ideas of Rod Blagojevich and Martha Stewart come up? Is it simply a matter of who can gain the president's ear in order to get a pardon process? Or is there an attorney here in the White House through which these requests are funneled through, which eventually make their way up to the president?
Certainly there are a number of attorneys here at the White House, and they review these matters, but ultimately the president looks at each of these cases individually and makes that decision as he has the right to do so. Hallie?
Sarah, thanks. The special counsel didn't seem so unconstitutional when the president was calling on one to investigate his political opponent during the campaign. So is it only unconstitutional if the president doesn't like it?
Once again, the president's made his views on this point clear. I don't have anything else to add. Jennifer?
About the constitutionality of it,
Question for you, Sarah. Thank you. The president on Friday said that he's open to bilateral deals with Mexico and Canada. Is he still leaning towards bilateral deals as he heads up to Canada at the end of this week, or is he still thinking, or is he thinking that he'd like to save NAFTA and just renegotiate?
As the president said, he's open to it, but we're in ongoing negotiations. Francesca?
Thank you, Sarah. I did want to follow up on that and try and figure out what exactly the basis was for the president's claim that it is unconstitutional. But I wanted to ask you about something else as well. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt has been accused of enlisting taxpayer-funded staffer to not only shop for apartments around Washington, D.C., but also to shop for a used mattress from the president's hotel just around the corner. And I wanted to know if any of that gives the president pause at this point or causes his confidence in Scott Pruitt to waver.
Certainly looking into the matter. I couldn't comment on the specifics of the furniture used in his apartment. Sorry, Philip?
Sarah, thank you. I just want to check something with you. What in the tariffs that were imposed against Canada reinforced the U.S. national security?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of the question?
You know, the tariffs that were imposed against Canada, aluminum and steel, what in that reinforced the U.S. national security? In what form the U.S. feels more secure now that Canada has been targeted by tariffs?
The president feels strongly that the steel and aluminum industries are critical to our national security and our ability to protect ourselves. And that would be that reference point in the 232. Take one last question. Eamon?
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to ask you about the president's call today with Theresa May, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, who said that the president's tariffs on the EU were, quote, unjustified and deeply disappointing, according to the British readout of their phone call today. That's what she said to the president. How did the president respond to that?
The president feels very confident in his decision and will continue to make